Hello and welcome to a live edition of the Cyclone Insider Podcast and live video stream. Thanks for joining us after Iowa State's 62-14 loss to TCU, ending what ultimately turned out to be an incredibly disappointing and frustrating season for Iowa State that now heads into, Randy, I think, an absolutely critical offseason where I think a lot of self-evaluation, a lot of self-reflection, and to use what Matt Campbell said after the game today, soul-searching is going to have to go on to see how they turn it around. Because I think really probably for the first time ever under Campbell, there isn't universal optimism about where the program was heading. I think after year one, even with the whatever they were 3-9 season, you could feel that things were trending the right way and that Campbell knew what he was doing. I think even after that disappointing finish to 2019, there was still a recognition that you were getting a lot of talented players back on both sides of the ball. And then after last season, sure, everybody knew you were losing some of the best players in program history, but everybody felt like Campbell had proved himself time and time again that if this team probably wasn't going to compete for a Big 12 championship this year, but it was at least going to continue to move the ball forward. And that's absolutely not what happened. And now you go into this offseason where your offense is in shambles, your special teams is a mess. And I think you're looking – I don't know what Campbell's ultimately going to do, but I think there is a lot on the table in terms of options for change, because I don't think you can do what Iowa State did this year, specifically offensively, and not make changes. Now, we can talk about what those might be, but I don't know, man. Do you want to talk about this 62-14 thumping? Because it was not competitive from the get-go.
No,
it was
not at all.
24-0 before we got to the second quarter.
Yeah, I think this whole thing is about what kind of offseason changes he makes. He's got to show something that they're going to make improvement. And of the four offensive coaches, I think only two of them are safe. And I probably get blowback on one of them, but I think obviously Shieldhouse is safe. Joel Gordon is safe, and people wonder about Joel Gordon. The quarterback's coach, Hunter Deckers, wasn't great this year, but I kind of give Hunter Deckers a pass because he played behind one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. Plus, I kind of give Gordon a pass because he coached statistically the best quarterback in Iowa State history. He didn't all of a sudden get bad. So I think those two guys are safe. Now, Jeff Myers, the offensive line coach, I really think his rump's warm. And Tom Manning, I don't know. Everybody knows him and Campbell's relationship. And like you pointed out a few times, when Manning went to where did he go? To Indianapolis for a year, Campbell did not hire behind him. He kept that position open. So that showed me a lot. And in reality, yeah, okay, there were some questionable play calls. I'd like to see those calls with a healthy running backs and with an offensive line that was not substandard, and see what happens. But and why did I mention Shieldhouse? Maybe he'll have some of he's coaching the receivers and he's coaching the running backs. Maybe those are two key positions. Maybe he'll have some of that load lightened. And I forgot to mention another coach I know is safe is the tight ends coach, Taylor Mauser. Mouse is safe, but yeah, it's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on what's going on with Iowa State in the offseason. And that's just the coaches. My gosh, what's going to happen with the portal?
Well, Randy, let me stop you there. Let's talk about the coaching staff a little bit more, because I think people are going to want to hear about that. And I guess the one thing that I would give pushback to you about, which is not saying that you're wrong, but to play devil's advocate, I think you're right about Shieldhouse. I think Campbell sees him as a budding star in the coaching profession. I think you saw what the wide receivers have done under his tutelage. I think you've seen, despite the running game struggles this year, both Jirel Brock and Cartavius Norton had big moments. And had they stayed healthy, maybe we're talking about a different Iowa State offense and certainly Iowa State running game. But I think the devil's advocate argument against Gordon being completely safe is, yes, he coached the statistically the best quarterback in Iowa State history, the most winning quarterback in Iowa State history in Brock Purdy. But this is also year 3 that he's had Hunter Dekkers. And Dekkers did not look ready to compete at the Big 12 level day in and day out. Now, you can say that was because of the offensive line. You can say that it was because of the running game. And I'm not even saying you're wrong about those things. But I think in terms of if you're Matt Campbell and you're looking at why things went the way they did this year, I don't think you can look at the quarterback position and feel like that went swimmingly well. Like Dekkers finishes the year with 14 interceptions. That might end up being the most in the country. And again, like first-year starter, but third year in the program, third year under Gordon and under Tom Manning. So again, I think that everybody's got to be under evaluation here. And I don't think the quarterback position is any different, both for the coach and for the player. Dekkers, is in a sling today during the game with his right shoulder. Campbell said he thought he'd be fine, but they had to get some more tests done. But, I don't know that you can go into spring where it's Dekkers' job, no questions asked.
No way.
I think you got to have some competition there, whether it's from Rocco Becht. I don't know if J.J. Cole is going to be an early enrollee, or you got to go to the portal and have somebody that credibly can push Hunter Dekkers for that job. Maybe Dekkers is ultimately the guy. Maybe he wins the job, but I do think he's got to compete for it, or Iowa State's going to be putting itself in not the best position it can be.
And I wonder how healthy Dekkers was towards the end of the season. There were times today where I'm thinking that midway through the season, when he took off on some of those runs, that he just didn't look himself today when he was running like he did during the mid season. He looked a lot stronger then than he does now. And granted, that happens when the season's been wearing on. But I'd heard some rumblings about him being a little dinged up, but they continued to play him, and which everybody's dinged up now at this time of the year. But I guess I can't argue with what you're saying about Joe Gordon, but it's just a matter of how how massive these changes are going to be. You've also got to preserve some sort of stability with these players. And was J.J. Cole, was Joel Gordon one of the reasons J.J. Cole came to Iowa State, for example? I know his dad, Jamie, there's a legacy thing there. I get that. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I think,
and maybe there are changes on the staff. Like, we know Campbell is incredibly loyal and brought a lot of these guys over from Toledo. I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion you're going to see a ton of staff changes. I think it's, at this point, I think it's probably more likely than not, but I don't know that it's a guarantee. Yeah,
and I'd really like to see a special teams coach, but you and I both know that's not happening. I mean,
I did not get the impression tonight that that's something Campbell's.
Yeah, he's been adamant about that for years, that he's not going to have a dedicated special teams coach, and I do not get it, but I guess we'll have to trust he knows what he's doing in that respect. But certainly, special teams and a place kicker is wide open as far as not only competition on the team but also in the portal, and that's going to be huge both ways. That portal goes both ways. You got to get some offensive linemen in the portal. You've got to get some offensive linemen that are veterans, and they'll be there. They will be out there. And like you said, I think you need a quarterback that at least provides some sort of competition, and you can just revamp the whole special teams for what I think, for my worth, because my gosh, I mean, you had 2 missed field goals today. You had a snap go over the punter's head and hit the ref in the stomach or wherever it hit him. That's horrible, and it's embarrassing. I read some of your quotes from Deshaun Hanukkah, and they were right on. He's later down the line, and he sounds like he's looking forward to next year, but he's also wants to play on a better Iowa State football team. So we'll see what happens there. And I mentioned
that's the difficulty with the transfer portal too, Randy, because it's going to be hard to attract high-level players to a team
Right.
that just went 1-8. And not only that, but on the offensive side of the ball where you need the most help, if there's not major changes either in coaching or philosophy, it's going to be hard to attract high-level players. And then don't think for a second that there aren't coaches all across the country calling up some of the better Iowa State players, high school coaches or their brothers or their cousins, and being like, hey, man, you guys just went 1-8. Why don't you take a peek over here and see what we're doing? I mean,
and you know who the follow-up call will be from that coach. That will be that coach's bag man. It 100% will be that coach's bag man. Exactly. No question. You know, I hear you just talked to Coach so-and-so. Hey, dude, I've got $1.3 million, $1.2 million over 3 years I can offer you. You know, it's going to happen. Maybe not that much. Although I've heard that price tag out there for a player, not an Iowa State player. But yeah, it's going to happen. And I don't know whether Iowa State can play that kind of hardball. And maybe they don't want to. I don't know. Maybe they don't want to. But you know, Matt Campbell's talked about this program being developmental. Okay, I'll give you that. It's developmental in most positions. But when's the last time Iowa State had an offensive lineman developed so well that he went to the NFL? Let's see, 2013, Carter Bykowski. That's a long, long time. There's been a lack of development in the offensive line.
Yeah, again, I think the bottom line that just got underscored today is that this is a huge offseason for Iowa State. Certainly not. I don't want to paint too dire of a position here because the defense was still fantastic all year long. The recruiting has been at an incredibly high level for the last few seasons and seems to be going apace. And, you know, it was just 2 years ago that Iowa State was getting ready to play in the Big 12 title game this time of year and going on to win the Fiesta Bowl. But I think the larger point here is that once you reach those highs, it's really hard to stay there. And the fight against backsliding and erosion is incredibly difficult. And if you don't stem the tide or stop the bleeding before it becomes irreversible, you get into big trouble. Things can get away from you quickly at the highest level of college football. And I think that's where Iowa State finds itself, is if you're able to turn the tide and get things back pointed in a different direction. Right now, with this offseason, you're digging out of a much, 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 much shallower hole than potentially you will be if this thing continues to go offensively the way it has been going, to where, you know, maybe it gets away from you and you're looking back at 2020 and being like, damn, that was a long time ago and a very different program ago.
Let's throw in the factor also that you're recruiting and you'll be coaching in a new conference essentially, because BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and Central Florida, they're coming in next year. It's going to be 14 teams. They're coming in. You're coaching against you'll be coaching against different opponents. So yeah, you've got to step up your game a little bit. I think Iowa State can hold its own with you know, everybody except Cincinnati, and I don't know, maybe Cincinnati, depending on what Pickle does. But
yeah, Ryan Day's all of a sudden on the hot seat.
I know, exactly. Oh my gosh, how about that stupidity? But yeah, did you notice Gene Smith? Did you see any of that game? Gene Smith was on the sidelines at the end of the game, and he did not look happy. But be that as it may, yeah, I think this is a very big off season. I mean, just for the factors that we mentioned, plus the newness of the Big 12 next year. And are we ever going to get a schedule, by the way?
Number 4 TCU beats Iowa State 62-14. May have punched its ticket to the college football playoff, regardless of what it does next weekend at AT&T Stadium in the Big 12 championship game. Meanwhile, Iowa State finishes a disappointing season with easily its worst game of the year, finishing 4-8 overall, 1-8 in the Big 12, and now kind of stares into the abyss here a little bit into an offseason that is, I think, begging for change, or at least begging for self-evaluation after what can really only be termed a horrendous offensive performance over the last 9 games. We'll see what happens. Be sure to be locked into DesMoinesRegister.com the Cyclone Insider podcast feeds as Randy and I bring you all the off-season coverage you can handle. And, oh, by the way, the Iowa State men's basketball team just knocked off the number one team in the country, and the women's program is one of the best in the country and is also playing for a Phil Knight Invitational Championship on Sunday. So lots to be paying attention to over the next month for Iowa State athletics. He's Randy Peterson. I'm Travis Hines. This has been the Cyclone Insider podcast and live stream. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.